podcast for Skill Hands Organization. I'm Isa, your host, and today we have Dana, who's an English Studies student, a Master's English Studies student at the University of Nottingham. Now, as an English Studies student, obviously there's a lot of reading to do, and it's just so important just to get through the course. But more generally speaking, why do you think reading is so important to us?
Yes, well, I love reading, not only as part of our Masters, but in general, I love cuddling up with a good book. But I think that reading has almost a political aspect to it.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, it's, well, for me, reading is more than just getting to know other authors or other points of view. For me, it's understanding what the world looks like, also in other contexts, in other cultures, in other countries. I am from Mexico, so most of my references are from Mexico and from Latin America. But I grew up reading books that were translated from English to Spanish. So I also think that translation is an important part of reading as well, because it enables us to understand different points of view in general, but from our language. So you are a linguist, so you know what that means. But I think that reading, at least for me, what has given me is the opportunity to understand the world from different perspectives and points of view, and not necessarily a point of view that has to be inside a culture or inside an individual. I think it can be shared, and that's for me the beauty of reading. And from analyzing literature and analyzing language, I know that you understand what that means. I think that this political aspect gives us the opportunity of understanding, for example, what's happening on the other side of the world. And I think that's a really powerful thing to do, and a really powerful thing to understand. Reading also gives us amazing abilities such as analysis and communication and everything. But reading, it's about creating worlds and about creating realities. And for me, opening a book and getting to know that reality, it's making that reality part of your life in a way.
Definitely.
And that not. And for example, I mean, I know that when we talk about politics, it may seem that it's really far away from us, but in reality, it's part of our life. And in a way, when it's personal, it's political, and when it's political, it's personal. So yeah, I think reading gives us that opportunity of
definitely spoken like a true Master's in English Studies student. But yeah, definitely something like reading helps you connect with so many people around the world. So Dana, given that we talked about how reading connects us with a lot of people around the world and how it introduces us to a lot of new concepts, I would think that reading would be a very important tool in empowering women as well. So how do you think that literature as such empowers women? How does it empower you actually?
Well, I think that when reading and you get to know different realities and everything, I think it's important to see ourselves reflected in that reality as well. So the fact that women are writing and women are reading, it's kind of like a circle of creation in itself. I mean, you are reading about what is happening to women around the world, so you will feel empowered to do the same thing. So I think that's one of the main or the most important part when reading is understanding that there are different voices around the world. And for example, when it comes to women or minorities that are writing and taking up that that power to talk and use their voice, I think that makes not only a powerful statement, but also a way of saying language is ours, and language is part of our reality, and we're making that language our own. And for me, that's a way of empowerment and liberation in itself. So I think it's really nice. But for me personally, the way that it has empowered me is by reading other women and reading what's happening in my own country. Right now, Mexico is going through a wave of violence since 2008. I mean, it has been part of since before that, but the way that women have used their voices and wrote about what is happening in the world and what is happening in Mexico, it's a way of empowering, and it's a way of reflecting what is happening while using your own voice. So, and in a way, I think it's this circle of reading, creating, and using language. So I think that empowerment through reading, it's very real and it's very personal as well. I mean, you can interpret a book in many ways, and even in like individually, you can read a book a couple of times or 3 times, and each time it's different. So empowerment has this individual level, but it's also collective because you are sharing that empowerment with other women and sharing that empowerment with other people. And yeah, I think that, for example, I'm thinking about some recommendations or some reference. I think about Dolores Reyes, that wrote a book about a girl that can eat dirt, and that dirt shows us what happened to different people that were murdered. So
how so?
Yeah, I mean it's magical realism. So magical realism has this perspective of politics and empowerment also, which is really interesting. But I think about this book because it has shown us how literature can make us kind of like alter our reality through language and through genre and through metaphors, but also empower others through imagination. But it's very real, and you can see the consequences, like the real physical consequences when it comes to feminism and empowerment and using our voices. So yeah, I think that empowerment, it's also collective, and you cannot be individually empowered without empowering others. And that's the thing with reading, because it shares what's happening.
Yeah, definitely very true. I love what you said about like the cycle of creation as well, because at Skilled Hands what we do is that we host workshops to allow people to craft and make things. And I feel like that kind of like, you know, being able to make something, being like seeing that physical, like seeing that physically realized, your efforts physically realized, is also such a beautiful thing and such a beautiful way to empower yourself, to show that, oh, like this is something that I've made with my own hands. But yeah, that was very, very lovely, a very lovely take on reading.
Yeah, and I think that creating, it's also a way of putting yourself into what you create. And it's really, apart from being really nice and beautiful, I think it's also political to say, I created this. And by creating this, I can inspire others to create. And for me, that's reading.
Oh, that's beautiful. So Dana, we've been talking about all this, like literature empowering us, but are there any specific examples of literature that you would say are very empowering for women?
Yeah. Well, I was mentioning Dolores Reyes with Come Tierra, which uses magical realism to denounce a political reality in Latin America about disappearances and forced disappearances. But I think that, I mean, women writing and using literature as a means to an end, I think it has been used everywhere. I mean, it's not only from Latin America. I think mostly I use those references because it's part of my reality. But I grew up reading Sylvia Plath, you know. I grew up reading Virginia Woolf. I grew up reading, when I was in high school, I got really into Simone de Beauvoir, you know, you know, the fact of having, you know, this idea of feminism in literature, and that's why I was really into women writing. I'm not usually, like, I've been taking some courses about like literature being feminine and you know, feminine literature, and we don't actually know what is that, because there's no thing about, there's not such thing as feminine literature in itself. Like, it's more about writing from our perspectives and women writing, and that's I think really beautiful. For more specific recommendations, I would say read the new wave of women writers that are exploring horror and short stories. Right now, horror, it's been a part of the Latin American reality. So, for example, Mariana Enriquez, which I've seen that she has some of her work translated into English. I think there's some here in
I'll be sure to check
it out. Check that out. She's amazing. Mariana Enriquez, which she writes from horror and short story perspective. But there's also, for example, Dalia de la Cerda, which is a Mexican writer. Mariana Enriquez is Argentinian. Dolores Reyes, which is a really good, like I mentioned previously. For poetry, I think Alaíde Foppa, which was the first women in creating a literary magazine in Mexico.
Ooh.
Yeah, she's really nice. Her poetry is beautiful. I've been reading Han Kang, the vegetarian.
Oh, right,
you know, she won the Nobel Prize for Literature. Annie Ernaux, also from France. So you have different women writing from different perspectives. And yeah, I mean, if you're interested, there's also several podcasts if you want to listen to what's going on right now with women writing. yeah, I think that pretty much covers it up. I don't know if you need some other recommendations, if you want to explore more about that, but I'm pretty sure that right now women writing are everywhere, and the fact that there are women writing and being self-published and using, for example, their social media to write, I think that's beautiful as well, because they're making language in a way that probably other people are not doing. So it's nice to see that.
Yeah, I mean, it's lovely to see that all of this literature is coming from so many corners of the world, like you mentioned, like Latin America, and then there's some coming from South Korea. All of these amazing literatures coming out, but it just goes to show, especially with social media, it's also written in a way that's accessible to everyone as well. Exactly. Like spreading literature, making sure that other people can hear your voice, which is so incredibly important. It's so important to empower yourself, make your voice heard, make yourself seen, as we do at Skilled Hands as well, with the craft workshops where you create, you let your voice out, you let your creativity shine, and that's how I think literature and crafting empowers you as well. So don't be afraid to let your voice be heard and let your creations be seen. Well, Dana, it's been lovely having a chat with you, but thank you so much for all your recommendations as well, and hopefully everyone feels inspired to read as well after this. But yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you.